All right, today we're going to be talking about React. React is a front-end framework. We've mentioned this slightly before. And today we're going to create our first React application, and we're going to learn how to use components and then state and prop values within the components. Before we get started, I want to say that you should never manually edit state and prop values. This doesn't make much sense to you right now, but this is something that we want to make sure you keep in mind all the time, and we'll revisit it when we're talking more about the state and prop values themselves. Okay, so we've heard of the model view controller model. So in Django, we used models for the models. We used templates for anything UI related, so views. And then the controller is just views. So now when we're going to be working with Django plus React, React is going to replace our templates. So when we were creating templates, we had to create an HTML file. And then if we want extra functionality, we would have to add a JavaScript file as well. So React is going to handle all of that functionality for us. And we're going to be replacing the front end of our full stack application with React. So what is React? React is a framework. A framework is a JavaScript library, pretty much. I mean, framework in general is just a library. It's a collection of code that is written to do a certain thing. React is specifically a JavaScript library that helps us develop user interfaces. It was developed by Facebook, I believe in 2012, and it's open source, and it is mainly structured by creating and using components. So what are these components? Components are, it's essentially a user-defined HTML tag with extra functionality that you can add to it. So here we see we created two variables that hold certain information. And here I'm returning a user-defined HTML tag. So I created this, and you can send in attributes. So similar to our HTML attributes that we've seen, these are called props. So you can set props or properties to these components, and you can send information in that way. So this syntax is called JSX. So it's JavaScript XML. And what it is, it's basically a marriage syntax between JavaScript and HTML. So you have, you're writing tags in line with the actual functionality. And so this allows for reusability. You can create, let's say you want, you're making a blog website and you want each component of the blog to have a certain format and a certain functionality. So you can just create one of these components and then reuse it along in your code. Yeah, that's pretty much it for that one. So functional versus class-based, you'll hear this a lot of times. So there are a few ways to create components. You can make a functional-based component, which uses functions, so JavaScript functions to represent these components. And this is the preferred way to structure our components from now on. So previously, when React had started, the preferred way was class-based components, which uses classes to represent the components instead of functions. It's slight syntax difference, and it is how everything used to be written. So there's a big chance if you go to a company and you're working on either updating their UI or just working on it, you might see class-based components written out. But nowadays we use functional, and we'll see the differences. And when you look at a functional-based component, you should be able to convert it to a class-based component in your head. It's not too big of a difference. Okay, so how do we actually create these apps? There's also two ways of doing this. There's probably multiple. So we typically use a library to help us out with this creation. So similar to when we used Django start project, that creates a project for you. This Vite, that library that we're going to be using is going to scaffold out an entire project for us. So yes, I'll talk a little bit more about this, but before I do, I want to mention that there is another way that you might come across, and it's called create React app. So this is the base way of creating a function. So a React application. So you do npm create React app, and then you put your app name, and then you can do your application. So Vite actually creates it in a slightly better way. It's more optimized and it's faster. Vite just stands for fast in French. So that is why we're using this library instead of create React app. Okay, so I'm gonna start creating an application. So if you guys want to code along, please do. Okay, so I'm gonna start terminal. I'm in one of my folders that I want to be in. This is my folder for my demos and notes. So what I'm going to do is type npm create Vite. So you can just type this. You can also put the app name after it. I'll show without. So if I hit enter, it asks me for a project name. If this is the first time that you're using create Vite, it'll prompt you, do you want to install like create Vite library? And you just say yes, and it'll install everything for you. So npm create Vite, I want to give it a project name. I'm gonna say this is my intro to React project. And then it'll ask you to select a framework. I'm gonna go with my down arrow, I'm going to select React. So this framework Vite allows you to create applications with a bunch of different frameworks. We just want the React one. And I'm going to select JavaScript. And there we go. So it has created a scaffolded out project for us. So to actually run the application, I have to do the rest of these steps. So before we get into this, I'm just going to talk about what we see here real quickly. So we have a folder with our project name created, and we have a few folders and then a few files here. So first folder we see is public. This is where you can put some assets, so like pictures or anything that's used in your app. Our source folder here, src, this will hold all of our code, all of our JavaScript JSX code. This is what will be held in here. It creates a git ignore that holds all the, that already includes all the stuff that we don't really need to include in source control. So it's pretty neat that it already comes built in like this. So index.html, this will be our main entry point to the to our website. You are never gonna edit this really. So this index.html, you don't touch. Basically what it does, it just sets up the application. So you can change the title. If you need to add certain things into the headers, you can, but you probably won't need to. So here, so we have an image here. This image comes from this public folder. You can change the title to say my React app. And then so in the body, we have our root, and then we have a script. So in here, you're not going to really need anything. Yes, actually, okay, let me say this again. So all we see here is a div with an ID named root. And then we are including our JavaScript. So JS is the JavaScript extension, and then JSX is for the new XML JavaScript that we're going to be using, right? So this is saying that we want to load a script coming from source, main JavaScript. So this is our first JavaScript file. This is our main JSX, and this is the root of our application. And that is it. So it just loads the script. And then what the script does, it grabs something from a library called React DOM. So it grabs the DOM that is attached to here, right? You're creating a root element. And so also this main.jsx, we're never going to touch. So I just wanted to show how our application is being rendered. So it does, we've seen this before, document.get element by ID. So it's grabbing the element that's called root from our index right here. And it is rendering everything within here. So all of our code is going to go into our app file or our app component. React.strict mode, this is just for error checking, and it just helps with development, so you don't really need to worry about this. But this is basically what this is doing. It is grabbing the DOM element from our body, and it will inject our application component, our entire application code that is compiled with from this JSX files, and it will insert them into here. So that's how we can actually render something on the page. So let me just do these commands and I'll show you what actually shows up. So I'm going to intro to React. So I'm going to cd into that folder that I just created. I'm going to do npm install. Can someone tell me what npm install does? Or like a guess?
Is this installing Node.js?
This is installing, it is installing something. It's installing certain dependencies for this project.
Is it basically like pip install requirements?
Exactly. So we've seen, like Zach was saying, pip install requirements. So our requirements is going to be coming in from this folder down here, this file, sorry, package.json. So this package.json holds our dependencies here. I'll talk about the scripts in a second, but this just is general information for NPM. So it uses it to know the configurations of this specific project. So when I do npm install, it's going to install all of my dependencies. So I'm going to hit npm install. It's going to take a bit of time. But yeah, okay. This file just got created, and this is just kind of dumping all of the information and dependencies of what got installed. You don't have to worry about this one. But yeah, basically our dependencies get installed through npm install. If you want to add a new dependency, you can either add it here. So I can add something another package that I have, whatever it's called. I can specify the what is it called, the version. And then I can do npm install again, and it'll refresh all of my dependencies. I could also just say npm install certain package here, and it will automatically add it to my file. So that's just a few ways of managing dependencies in our application. And we'll see this again as we play around with this more. So I'm seeing questions in the chat. So no, we do not need to use a virtual environment for this one. We can just create it normally from our over here. Okay, so I didn't change anything. I'm just gonna start my changes. Okay. So it said to do npm install and then npm run dev. So npm run will run certain scripts that are attached to your project. And those scripts are also defined in this package.json. So you see here, we have a few scripts. So for dev will run the development server. So it'll allow me to actually see the changes that are in my application. Build and preview, we'll talk about later. Build pretty much builds the application in a way that allows you to use it with another framework, so we can use it with Django. So we'll use this build later. So I'm gonna do npm run dev. I'm gonna hit enter. I got this. So it is running on localhost 5173. I am gonna navigate to my here, localhost 5173. And there we go. This is our base application that was created. I'll show you the actual code that makes this happen. But yeah, so to summarize, all we had to do was create the application using Vite. We CD into that newly created application, we install our dependencies, and then we run our server. Michael, so you're asking what made it go to that port. There are certain configurations that are built into this package manager. So Vite automatically creates it at that at this location, pretty much. It's not in this folder. I'm not sure the exact location, but
Does
yes.
it always use the same port number like Django does?
No, so the port number here is 5173 versus Django, it's 8000. Vite just creates a different one.
Will it create a different one every time? What?
No, it's going to be the same every time.
Oh, gotcha.
So if you guys ran this as well, you should be able to see 5173. Any questions? Are you guys able to get to this point? Were you able to run it? Yeah. Awesome. One thing I didn't mention when we did the npm install. So it took the dependencies that are in my package.json and it installed all the dependencies into a folder called node modules. So node modules, it's a huge folder that contains every single library that we will need to run this application. You don't really need to worry about anything that's in here, but if you are ever curious about what goes into like the React library, you can just see all the code from the React library in here. There's just a bunch of files with a bunch of information. A lot of it, some of it doesn't make sense. Some of it might make more sense than others. But yeah, this is just all the libraries that have been installed for your project, which is why we include it in the .getIgnore. Where is it? So .getIgnore, you see here, node modules is not included. Because every time you, so if you push this to Git, you would just download it. Your package.json would be your requirements, basically. You would do npm install, and then you'll get a fresh updated node modules. Okay, I'm gonna pause here to answer some questions, and then we can move on if there are questions. We didn't see any code yet, so there probably aren't. Okay. So, like I said, our index.html is our only HTML page, and this allows our JavaScript to be injected into the HTML page that is viewed on the browser itself. Let me put, oops. Why is it not? Okay, I just wanted to swap those. Okay, so how are we actually seeing this information? Let's do this. I'm gonna, sorry. Okay, I just wanted to put them side by side to show you how all this information is. Don't know why I'm struggling so much with this. Hold on. Okay.
I think you need to drag that Node.js onto the desktop that has VS Code on it.
That
Like, yeah, from there, just drag it down below.
yeah. So here. Oh, but it's only showing the one.
Yeah, so if you go back to that, all your desktop views,
Yeah.
just drag that, like click and drag it off there into there. If that works. There you go.
it is. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm not a Mac expert yet. Okay, so here I can just drag this to the right. Okay. Okay, so our main.jsx is importing this app component. So a component is something that you can see, like it's basically, it has a tag similar to HTML tags, and it's importing this app component, and this is what is rendering. So all of the code that we are going to be changing starts at the app. You're very rarely going to update your main.jsx, and you typically don't touch the index.html. Okay, just wanted to reiterate those. So what is in our app.jsx? Let's look at it real quick. Okay, so here we have a lot of stuff, so don't panic yet. So let's start at the top. We are importing something. Let's actually ignore this import. So we're importing a logo from assets/react.csv. Okay, so we can import pictures this way. It's importing a CSS document. So app.css, there's a bunch of CSS stuff written here that applies to our components. So this is how you can import CSS files. And then we have our actual component. So this is a functional component. So you'll see it defined as a function. So we have a function called app, and it doesn't take any arguments in here, and then just curly braces. So every app returns something. Every component returns something. And what gets returned is going to be rendered onto our screen over here. And when we're returning, we return HTML elements or JSX elements that are basically the same thing. So here we have a div. Class name is app. If we look at our CSS, we can see, I think it's in the index one. Okay, I guess they don't have specific things to render app, but so class is a reserved keyword in JavaScript, so you can't use class. So instead of class, we use class name to determine that this is going to be a class name for this thing. So here, class name card. If I looked at my app CSS, there should be one called card right here. So this is just how you can add certain classes or class names to elements. Okay, so here we have a div element. Anytime you're returning these elements from a component, it has to be one element on the outer that includes all the inner elements. So usually you see a div and then everything else inside of it. So here we have a div that's just the general app div. We have another div within that that contains, let's see, 2 links. So this link and then this link. So an A tag is an anchor tag. You have your href, and then it has an image within it. So these two images here are these 2 images. So these are both links. If I click on them, they actually link to the actual documentation websites. So here. Okay, so we understand that. Let's delete that. If I save this, it'll do an auto reload. Sometimes it doesn't reload properly and you need to refresh your page. I think I did something to break it, actually. When in doubt, stop your server and then restart it again. Wait, what did I do?
You deleted the first import at the top, right?
Yeah.
Which first? Oh, the first import. Oh, yes, because it broke. Yes. Thank you. So I saved this. Refresh. Let me check. Disable cache. Okay. Yeah. So sometimes it gets stuck and you have to restart the server. So now it's running properly, hopefully. Count is not defined. Oh, I deleted here count. Okay. So let me just go back. There we go. We'll explain this the use state later. So if I just remove this div, including this information. Okay, so our pictures got removed. Here we have regular header tags. We have a div with a button within it. So this button will, if I click on it, it'll count. And yeah, just regular information that we see in an HTML template. So let's delete all of this information. We'll keep just the bare div in here. I'm going to close this real quick. Okay. So in here, I'm just going to replace it with a simple H1 tag. Oops. It's saying good morning. And I save, I see good morning over here. What if I want to add another message saying hello there. Oops. Why does that keep happening? Okay. So save, shows up. And I want to have a third one saying, how are you? Okay, so I can do this. I can add multiple elements. Let's say I want to create for each one of these, I want like good morning, and I want some subtext under here saying something. So I create this, I can create this, and so on. So I can keep repeating all of these, or I can just create my own component. So let's try creating our own component. Typically, our components will be stored in a folder inside of our source folder called components. So I'm just going to create a folder called components. This is just for organization purposes, because you're going to end up with a lot of components and it gets pretty busy. And then here, I'm going to create an app called message.jsx. And this will contain my my new component that I want. So it'll have an H1 tag and a paragraph tag saying something. So first thing I have to import is, let's see, actually I don't have to import anything because I'm using functional components. So I create a function called message. Open parentheses and then brackets. And then every functional component has to return something. So I can return an H1 saying good morning. Okay, and then after I create this, I have to export it so I would be able to use it in my app. So I have to say export default message. So export default message is going to be my component. And then because of this line, I can actually import it into here. So I can say import message from, it auto-completed, but you import message from, so ./components. So it's in the same, so ./components/message. So from here. And now I can just use it like a normal HTML tag. So it's called message. So I just make a message here and it should, I'm gonna actually display hello world. Okay, so I put my message in here and now I see hello world over here. And now if I want to use this component multiple times, I can just repeat it and we'll see the same thing over and over. So I'm going to delete these. I wanted a p tag inside of it. So I'll add that into the message component in a bit. Okay, so we can create a component, we can repeat it. Let's say I want the message that's actually going to be printed out to be something different based on the one.
Did you just create the components folder?
I did, yes.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a reason that you created the components folder? Is there?
Yeah, that's purely for organization purposes. Because you're usually going to be creating many components, and instead of them all being inside of the source folder, it just makes it easier to put it into a components folder. You'll see also later on when we're doing multiple pages that we'll have a pages folder just to keep track of different things. Yeah, there's different ways of organizing these projects. Okay, so our message here, let's say we want to grab a message that is specific. So we want to send in what message we want to display. So to do that, we can just say here, my greeting is going to equal hello there. And then here I want how are you? Okay. So we want to send in a value into this message component. And similar to HTML attributes, you can just set the attribute name, and then you will put whatever content you want inside of it. And in here, to be able to access this greeting, we have something called a prop. So a prop, or it's short for property. So properties, sorry, I think it's just props. So properties are external data that is sent down from your parent to your child component. So here our parent component is app, our child component is message, and the property that we're sending into message is going to be this greeting property, and it has some value. So to access it, we say that we're going to take in props, and this is also props is a reserved keyword. Here we can give it any name, but to stay with the convention, we should use the word props. So if I want to display something from the props, I can say here it's props.greeting, and there we go. It displays, for the first two, it displays something. For the other two, it does not, because we don't have a greeting in there. But it does not give us an error, which is it has its ups and downs. So yeah, so we can actually grab props and access the information here. Let's say I wanted to add subtext. This is my first greeting. Okay, so I added subtext in here. I can also access the subtext. So one thing to note, if you're returning more than just this one element, first of all, you have to put them in parentheses. So if we don't put them in parentheses, any line that goes under here will not be executed. So our return is just going to return that first line, and it won't even look at the stuff under it. That's why we will need to put this in a parentheses. Okay. So here we're returning our H1, and then I want to have a paragraph tag that returns props.subtext. Okay, so I'm getting this very ugly error. What is it saying? So adjacent JSX elements must be wrapped in an enclosing tag. So like I said before, when you're returning elements, it has to be all encapsulated in one element. So all I have to do is add a div around it. Grab this closing tag. So now, oops. So now these two elements are encapsulated in one div element. And when I return this, it actually, let me save that. Okay. So when I return this, it'll just return one element with whatever is inside of it. So yeah, that's just something to keep in mind. You also always need to encapsulate it with one.
Is it a good idea to put, like, when you do that div like that, to give it like a class name and stuff, or is that bad practice? Like a class name?
No, it's good. Yeah. No, it is. It is good practice to put a class name. It'll help you with styling and all that stuff. So yes. So class name here, I want to say, I'm just going to call it message container. I think it has to be hyphen. Okay. Okay, so yeah, we create an encapsulating div. We can access the properties that are sent in from our parent to our child component. using the props. So props dot greeting, props dot subtext. If we, let's say we don't, so you see here, I didn't put anything into here. So let's add some greetings. This is my React app. Greeting equals. Okay. I forgot last closing. Let's see. Okay. So it created 2 more messages with this greeting. So let's say if I don't have something called subtext, I still want to render something. Maybe I want to say I don't have a subtext or something like that. So what I can do is back here in this message, inside of this paragraph tag, we've seen this, the ternary operator, where it's basically a shortened version of an if statement, like if else. So we can say, I'm gonna remove this. Actually, I'll keep it. So, okay. Within our tags, if we want to insert JavaScript, we put them in these curly braces. So here we're accessing a variable, so we put it into curly braces, kind of similar to Django when we put the 2 curly braces within the nested ones. So here I can actually put some logic as well. So inside of these, I can say props.subtext, and if I put a question mark, that allows me to use a ternary operator. So if this props.subtext exists, then I want to render my props.subtext. Else, oops. Okay. Else is after the colon. So else I want to say no subtext provided. Okay, so I save this, and now we look at the screen. I only added subtext for my first one. So this is the subtext that I had sent in, right? So this is my first greeting. I look at here. For the other 3, I did not include anything. So it saw that props.subtext was empty, or it did not exist. So it went to this line and it said no subtext provided, and it inserted that into my paragraph tag. So inside the paragraph tag, it's either taking the props.subtext or it's taking this text that I gave it. Here, any questions? Have you guys been able to keep up with or like get to this point as well? No? Is anyone stuck on something? Stuck on errors? We can see some errors. It'll help us.
Then I have a question. Is the color of the web browser can prevent you from seeing the test?
It is possible. Let me see.
Because I'm only seeing my subtext, I'm not seeing my the other stuff.
Yeah, it is possible. So that could be because it's using specific styling that was set here. It was set by when the app was created. All you have to do is just comment this app.css out, and oops, I did not mean to do that. And then you can go into main.jsx and then also comment that CSS file out. So now we're getting like basic unstyled. Can you see it now?
I'm doing it now.
Okay.
No, it's just changed my color. It's white now, but I'm just seeing my subtext. I don't know if I'm missing something.
Okay, is it? So you have this here, right? Are you sending in the greeting properly? Because if this one is not there, you might not see anything.
Yeah,
So
I'm doing that correctly. So I really don't know what's going on.
your voice was cutting out.
Yeah, I'm doing that properly, but
Okay.
I'm only seeing my ratings. I mean my subtext.
Yeah. Do you want to share your screen or we can look at it afterwards?
Sure, I can share my screen.
Okay, let me stop.
Here's my screen.
Okay, go to your app.jsx real quick. And then go to, okay, can you go to the message
This page.
component? So on line 3, it's greeting instead of greetings. So if you save now, there we go.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay, share my screen again. Oops. Okay. Yeah, we can also look at these elements here. It, like we said, it's just one HTML document that is created, which is the index.html. It injects all the code that is in our app into this main.jsx, into these elements. And this gets injected to an element called root in our index.html. So this div will contain all of our app code. So if we look at this, we see a div called root. And within this, we have our app. And within our app, we have our 4 messages. So you'll see here, we created these elements called message. You won't really see this here. You'll just see the code that was injected into the message. So message, this is what we're seeing living in here. Let me make this a little smaller so we can see it side by side. So we have our div, which is called message container. We have our H1, we have our P tag, and this is basically what gets rendered. It just shows the final rendering of everything. There's an extension called, I think it's just a React extension or React developer extension that is pretty helpful to see actual components. So it'll show the component that is named message in here in the React. It usually shows up at the end after you install the extension. But yeah, let me. React developer tools. I did not want to click on the add. Okay. Okay, so I added the extension. Now, if I look back at my app, oops, I think I might need to refresh and then close this and open it again. There we go. So now these showed up. We have components and then profiler. Components will show you, so we have an app component, and within this app component, we have our message components that were in here. And if we click on that, it shows you your props and where it was rendered by and the source of where it's being called. So this is pretty helpful tool. I haven't played around with the profiler too much, so we will, yeah, we'll revisit that at another time.
How did you get that React developer tools up in the inspect? Is that
I had to close my inspector, I refreshed my page, and then I opened it again.
okay?
Yeah. So just like a hard refresh pretty much. Okay, any questions about this so far? So all we've done is we created a message component, we imported it into our app, and then we displayed it a couple times. We rendered it 4 times. There we go. I'm gonna uncomment the stylings. So putting stylings up here will apply them to the entire app, and then putting them in here will also apply them to the app, but within, I don't know the difference between putting it here and putting it in the main.jsx. I believe the index CSS might be specific to the entire application, like maybe font families and certain colors. And then the app.jsx is actual like element placement and stuff like that. You can also create CSS files for each component and just have them attached to those, so you don't have to keep everything in one big file. Okay, so any last questions about props or anything like that?
Line 24 in this file, export default app.
Mm-hmm.
We're creating code here, and then we're exporting it over to the main.jsx.
Yeah, and we're importing the app in here, and then this is what is rendering inside the root element.
Okay, is this our first time using export? I don't think I've
I
actually
think
had it explicitly. I
think we saw it once in passing. We didn't really play around with it too much, but yeah.
Okay.
Did anyone have their hand? I think Jim. Yeah.
Yes, can you tell us again about Vite? Are there other choices that we can use for this? Is just this one thing we can use? Is it the most popular? Is it do something different than others?
So the most popular is create React app. So create React app is similar. It just you run one command and it creates the folder structure for you. So I can actually just demonstrate this real quick. Let me open here's a terminal. Okay, so I'll put it in here. So if I do npm create React app and then the app name, so sample app. Oh, I didn't install. I think I need to do npm install create React app. I need to look up the documentation just because there's some. Oh, npx. npx is just a different package manager than npm.
So, but Vite is, so can you tell us again, what is Vite as compared to this create React app? Are they similar things, just named differently?
Yeah, they're similar things. They just create they scaffold out a project for you and give you a development server to code in, pretty much. They both do the same thing. Vite does it in a more optimized way, which is why we're using it. I think it was introduced last year. So not introduced to everyone last year, but we added it to the curriculum last year. So that's my app. Okay, npx is the one that will be used. It's similar to npm, it's just used for a different reason. I need to look more into it actually. But anyways, so yeah, create React app will just create your all the dependencies that you need. It'll bundle it all up and allow you to use a development server. Vite does the same thing, but if you notice, this is taking forever. It's the create React app is just slower, which is why we're using Vite. So this is Vite.js. So they tell you pretty much, they optimize the way all the code is being compiled and shoved into the browser to be rendered, which is why we're using it. But yeah, I would recommend kind of perusing the documentation. It's pretty interesting. But yeah, so the Create React app just finished. It creates a pretty similar folder structure. Some things are a little moved around, but it's the same concept. You add files, your main entry point or your main app code that you're going to be changing is going to be in a file called app.js. And you create components and then you run your server. So it has npm start instead of npm run dev. That's the only differences. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Nick, yeah.
I was assuming that this would work, but just wanted to confirm that since they're basically functions and props are essentially arguments that you can pass other components and return other components inside of each other.
Say that one more time. So you can return other components.
So can you can you pass a component as a prop and can you return a component?
So we're returning components when we do the export. You can have like multiple components, like if I made a message one and another functional component, and I can just export both of them out here. It is better practice to export one at a time. When, yeah, you typically don't want to send other components, you can just import it into that file. So like I did here in message, if I had another component that relies on this, I could just import it here instead. You actually could be, I do think you are capable of doing that. Like it allows you to do that. It allows you to send a component. There's just a little bit of syntax that you need to be aware of. I need to look that the specific syntax up, but you can also send functions. So if I defined a function up here, so function, like you can have a button click handler. Maybe our message component contains a button, handle click, and it does whatever stuff that needs to do, and then it returns something. Maybe it doesn't return something. So this handle click function can actually be sent in as a prop. So I can say handle click equals handle click. And I have to put this inside curly braces because I want to make sure that it's not taking it as like, this is like a variable pretty much. It's an alias for a function. So yeah, you can send in functions, you can send in variables, you can send in strings, also components.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Kayla.
I had two questions. Just for clarification, so you said that if we have multiple HTML tags in the component that we create, will we always wrap it like in a div as a container?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty common. If you have maybe it's not type div, but maybe there's like a different type of element, as long as it's all encompassed in one element, that's all you need to do.
Okay. And for my second question, so for conditions, like conditional statements in the components, are we only able to use ternary operators, or are we able to use standard conditional statements as well, like to include else ifs in there, or just ternaries?
I think ternary is better, or like you should stick to that, but we can just try it here. Yeah, I think it's just ternary operators. I don't think you can put an if statement within here.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. Other questions?
Actually, it's a follow-up question. Is the reason you can't do if statements is because this is a JSX file and not JS, or does it have more to do with like React?
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
I'm just like curious the reason that you have to use like ternary like statements like we did here on line 10 and 11 rather than if statements, like why it's not possible to do that in the message.jsx file.
I'm actually not sure. React, why? Ternary. I think it's because it's within the return. So conditional rendering, there's a few different ways to do it. So you can say, you can
Okay,
have,
so you can still do it, just got to be outside of the return statement.
yeah, so it can be within,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. So you can say if something, then you can return this, if not, return this. Let me see. Yeah, I would have to look into it a little more. But you can, yeah, you can use regular logic in here. So this is just a JavaScript function, so you can have anything in here you would want. So you can have variables, let something equals 7. You can have functions, you can have whatever logic you need, and then here you can render certain things. Okay, so when you're rendering something here, whatever is encapsulated within these should resolve to some sort of valid expression. So it could be a string, it could be a string. Yeah, so it's like inside of a p tag, what is valid to be displayed within it? That is the same thing that this has to evaluate to. So the ternary operator evaluates to either this one or this one, and both of these are strings. So props.subtext has a string. This is also a string. So if I wanted to have some sort of logic like the if statements, I can create a function here. So a function can be created the same way, like function name, blah, blah, blah. You can also have this other syntax. So I can say display subtext. And this is the arrow function syntax. So this is going to be the same thing as saying function display subtext and then open parentheses and curly braces. So here, display subtext, I can have if props dot subtext used Python. So here I can return props.subtext. Else I want to return this. So instead of having this logic in here, I could actually just I'm not going to comment it out. Let's see. I lost my terminal. Okay. So instead of this, I can actually just call the function itself. And it'll evaluate what I need to evaluate and then return what needs to be put into this this paragraph tag. So if I say display subtext and I don't have this, then it'll do the same conditional rendering. Oh, I forgot to put the message. Return no subtext provided. I save, and there we go. So I can keep my logic out here and in a function and then just display whatever is returned from that function, or I can have the I can have it all in here. So these are both valid. I can have that, or I can have this. And so now I think it's just taking, oh, it's taking both of them. So it's rendering this one and then that one afterwards. Okay. Any more questions? Yeah, Chris.
Yeah, so for the components and everything else, where do we import external dependencies? For example, either Axios or Bootstrap. Would that go in like the index HTML, or we put that in the JSX type files? Or both?
So first step would be to install it. So in the terminal itself, you could do the npm install Axios. So this is so you don't have to do the CDN import. So this installs it to your project dependencies, and then it'll show up over here. So I can actually just do this here. Install Axios, and then Axios just showed up over here. So that's the first step. And then at the top of wherever you're going to use the Axios, you just import. So import Axios from, I think it's just Axios. So you just import the library and then you can use it in your code.
Okay, so the JSX retains all the functionality of JavaScript, and then where able, we can actually just install using the package manager, and then that automatically updates the dependency list in our package.json.
Exactly. Yes.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is why React is so powerful, because you can still do everything in JavaScript, but you don't have to keep track of two different, like the HTML separate from the logic. You can have both of them combined into one, and less code writing, pretty much. So instead of writing your elements in HTML and then in JavaScript saying like get element by ID, this element, and then you want to manipulate it and stuff, you can just set up all the logic beforehand. Okay, great questions. Okay, let's take a little break, and let's come back in 1 sec.